And joining us now here on the Black Eagle Banneret, she will be inducted to the UCF Athletics Hall of Fame. She'll be the third UCF softball player to be inducted. Played at UCF from 2009 to 2012. One of the most decorated players on and off the field in the history of UCF athletics. To speak of Natalie Land joining us, Hall of Famer. How does that sound?
It sounds surreal, but awesome. So exciting.
Let's talk about the class you're going inducted in. You're Blake Bortles. You got Josh Sitton, Afia Charles, Jermaine Taylor. That's a good company you'll be hanging out with.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's an honor to be with those guys, just all of their accomplishments and the people that they are. So to be a part of this class it's just a huge, huge honor.
Take me through the process when you first found out you get the call, because I know UCF calls their inductees when they get inducted. What was that describe that moment when you get the call or how they reached out to you and when you got the word that, hey, you're going to be inducted to the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, so I kind of had a little bit of a heads up. So they texted me maybe like a couple days before and just kind of like an FYI, you have made in the top 10 of the potential Hall of Fame. So if you actually make the class, then we'll be reaching out to you on, I think it was maybe a Friday. So we'll be reaching out via FaceTime on Friday if you actually make it in. So, that whole day I had to work, of course. And so I was that whole day kind of just a little bit on edge. And I'm a physical therapist. So I was working with one of my patients and I get a FaceTime call. And so I just like hustle across the clinic trying to just, excuse me, and try to get to my phone. Well, I actually missed the first call. So I'm like, oh no, but thankfully they called, literally called right back and I was able to answer it. So yeah, I was in my office at work and they were, congratulations, the assistant AD, and just letting me know that I had made it in. So that's pretty much kind of how it went down.
What went through your mind what crossed your mind as you're getting that information, you're getting inducted, and then afterwards, as you tell your family, you tell your husband, you tell everybody, take me through that. What goes through your mind at that point? Yeah,
I guess you kind of go back to, it seems like so long ago that I was at UCF, but at the same time, it's, those memories are so fresh and just a huge part of my life. So to be able to celebrate those, and be a part of history there is, gosh, it takes your breath away. Honestly, don't even sometimes when I was telling people, I'm not a super emotional person, but you kind of get broken up and choked up a little bit just thinking about being a part of UCF forever.
It was truly remarkable. I was excited when you got the word. And what does it mean to be the third UCF softball player? You know Allison very well. You know Stephanie very well. It's kind of unique. In a lot of ways, you're connected to them because Stephanie was your coach your first year at UCF in 2009, ironically enough. And so you crossed paths. And then Allison had just finished. So you probably watched her play while you were being recruited when you probably made your visits at some point. And then she was the marketing in charge of marketing while you were playing for a couple of years. What does it mean to be joining those two in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, personally and athletically, it couldn't be joining two more amazing people. Stephanie, I think, is probably one person that has kind of just ever since the beginning of my UCF career just helped me and guided me and has been a huge impact of, I think, the player that I was and kind of even the person that I am. She continues to kind of mold young athletes. And so having her as a coach was just amazing. And having her as a friend now, just the person that, can always reach out to and that she'll be there type of person. And Allison, I remember watching her as I was being recruited by UCF and to watch them run into the playoffs and play Florida at home and win. It just kind of gave me that excitement to come in as a freshman and continue to carry on the legacy that both of them kind of left behind.
That's right. That was the Gainesville Regional where they knocked off Florida, ended, I think it was their long win streak among top 5 in the history of college softball. Were you actually in attendance for that, or were you watching or following it?
No, I wasn't in attendance, but I was following it closely. So that was I wish I would have went actually, but no, I didn't go to that game.
Let me read you. Stephanie and Allison both sent me quotes about you. So I want you to hear this from, here. Stephanie, about you, quote, Natalie Land is probably the best female athlete to ever come through UCF. She was one of the most talented and electric players I've ever witnessed take the field. Her defensive range and her offensive savviness is what set her apart from the rest. Natalie Land is a world-class athlete and person. Grateful to share the UCF Hall of Fame honor with Allison, Kime, who put us on the map, and now Natalie Land, the best athlete in the history of UCF. Two incredible people that bleed black and gold and left it all in the field. For those that don't know, Steph played the shortstop position, which you also would play. You played second and short. When you hear that statement there from Steph about you, what goes through your mind there?
Yeah. Yeah, she would tell me all the time, she would just be like, something about making that play or this. So just to hear that, yeah, it's an honor for her to say those things about me, for sure.
No question. We'll talk about your athletic ability. That was deal. But here's what Allison said about you. She goes, Natalie is a fierce competitor with an unbelievable work ethic. She continued the success of our program with her commitment to excellence, both in on and off the field. I am proud to call her now a friend and now a Hall of Fame teammate.
Yeah. That's
High
awesome.
regards there.
Hi. Yeah. Yeah. It's like I said, those two are just, it makes it that much more, sweet and honorable to be part of them, part of the group with them, because like I said, they really, Stephanie kind of started the program, being the first part of the first softball team ever. And then, Allison continuing that on. And so now to be a part of that is amazing.
Was the Hall of Fame something that ever crossed your mind, like in these last handful of years? Because this is going in on 10 years since you last played. You graduated in 2012. Some think about it like, hey, I wonder if I can make it, or some don't. Like, where were you on that? Did you think about, hey, maybe I have a shot to be in the Hall of Fame? Did that never cross your mind?
A little bit. I mean, just whenever, Stephanie got in and Allison, and Allison was just a couple years ago. So that was kind of fresh on my mind. And, every time you go back to the field, you kind of see the banner, out there on the field, and I didn't know if I would be, but it was just like, I really kind of hope, it was always in the back of my mind, is like, that would just be so cool. And I really hope that it happens, but to think that it would, no, that was kind of far in my mind. Yeah.
Well, and we wondered if you even play softball. Let's kind of talk into this a little bit, because I've talked to Coach Gillispie about you, obviously, since you walked into campus, but even more recently, I talked to her and reminded me about this. You're one of the most important recruits she ever had at UCF. She said, not only because from a softball standpoint, she was recruiting against other schools to get you, but she was also competing against other sports to get you, because you were being recruited as well to be a basketball player. So let's talk about that. What got you interested in softball? Because people may not be aware of this. You were an all-state player in basketball and softball. And I think you played other sports too, right?
I played volleyball a little bit, but yeah, basketball and softball were my two main sports. So I don't know. I played softball in like the AAU round, or I guess travel softball, since I was in 6th grade. But then around like the 10th grade year, right when recruitment kind of takes off, I decided, oops, I lost you there for a second. There we go. Okay. I decided, I don't know, that basketball I thought was the route I wanted to go. So I stopped playing travel softball and just solely focused on basketball for probably about a year and a half. And I was set that basketball was the way that I wanted to go. But I don't know, something kind of around my 11th grade year started tugging at my heart that maybe I should give softball another chance. So I actually was playing softball and basketball at the same time in the summer. And that's when Coach Gillispie first saw me play and showed interest. And after that, I was torn. I thought that I was maybe a little better. I at least maybe could have a little bit of a better career collegiately with softball, but I also really loved basketball, and it was maybe my first love, basketball. But after I decided to come on campus at UCF, I knew that I had made the right decision. Yeah.
That's pretty wild. So who was recruiting you to play basketball, and who was recruiting? Because this is so unique. Usually you're being recruited to play one sport. Because I remember every time we would go to Gainesville during your 4 years there, the Gainesville media people would be like, well, we thought she was going to come here to play basketball at Florida.
Yeah.
Or because obviously for those that don't know, your uncle is Kerwin Bell, who's a legendary quarterback at Florida and is now a college football head coach. But like there were a lot of people in Gainesville that thought you were going there either to play softball or basketball. Basketball was what they were talking about. So just what was that recruiting process like? Because you're being recruited in different sports.
Yeah. So the main sports, I had several other ones in Florida, but the main one was, basketball for the UF, and then also softball for UF and UCF. So when it came down to, and I had other ones for softball too, but those were, when it came down to the really like decision-making process, the three that I kind of had made my mind up on was UCF softball, UF softball, or UF basketball. But like I said, I mean, nothing against those guys. And I grew up a Gator. I'm a diehard, I still cheer for them and love to see them win, and with the rich history of our family. But I don't know, I just came on UCF campus and just something was tugging on my heart. I just felt that I could, make a huge impact and continue to help this program grow and become something great. I mean, it was already great, but just to keep it going and keep it rolling. So Coach Gillispie, Coach Walton, or Coach Beth at the time. It was just a decision that I never really looked back or never regretted.
Yeah, that was Beth Watson, the assistant you're talking about at UCF there, and that's pretty wild. Like, I don't, because when I started covering, I was just beginning. I was kind of when your freshman year was my third year, so I didn't really grasp all of this. I just knew about the uncle, and I knew about, but I never realized the enormity, because Coach Gillespie, coaches always pump up, get excited when they bring in a recruit. But I remember when she talked about you. There was a huge glow, and she told me the story about the basketball. And that felt she was a significant moment she felt in the program because she beat out a Florida to get a player, which at that time wasn't common. That was like a signature moment from a recruiting standpoint. She felt like for what you brought to the table. Do you ever wonder what if you would have played basketball? I mean, that's not many could say that. Like you. And it was funny because I remember your teammates. I won't mention their names because they'll get mad if I mention it. But there were some on the team at UCF. They told me that if you wanted to play on the women's basketball team at UCF, you would have thrived there too.
Yeah, I mean, I do. There was, especially early on, like maybe freshman and sophomore year. I remember thinking like, you're in the middle of the, like, did I make the right decision? Did I do it? And I even thought about maybe the 5th year type of thing, but those things always kind of crossed my mind. But now looking back on everything, I think I know that I made the right decision. Definitely was softball. That was the sport that I was meant to play collegiately, even though, you always second guess things like that. But I know I made the right decision. Yeah.
What kind of basketball player were you? Describe your type of game. Who would you do to compare your game to?
Yeah. Scrappy. I was a scrappy player, and I mean, you watched me play softball, so maybe you could see that. But I was definitely one of the better defensive players. I maybe wasn't the best skilled, and I would never say that. Maybe like obviously the UConn players of the world. That wasn't necessarily my type of basketball. I mean, I could shoot. I was a good ball handler, but I think kind of maybe what set me apart was just my scrappiness.
And I guess it would have been impossible to do because the way the schedules break out, basketball, jams into softball. So you couldn't have pulled off maybe being a 2-sport athlete like some of the male athletes have been able to do. Like a Deion Sanders, for example, played football and baseball, but they're on opposite semesters. But did you ever ponder that as, would somebody consider let me play 2 sports? Did you even think about maybe throwing that out there?
Yeah, well, I remember that whenever when I was going through before I decided softball versus basketball, that was actually a conversation with the Gators, with UF. It was maybe bring on, go for basketball scholarship. And then, but it was more about maybe just running bases for the softball team. So because I wouldn't be there for the whole season. So that was definitely thrown out, going and playing basketball, and then just kind of going after that season had concluded, going and running bases for the softball team. So yeah, I mean, I guess maybe it would have been on the table for certain teams, but it really would have been hard, especially academically, because I kind of had in my mind what I wanted to do on that realm as well. And ooh, being a college athlete is already hard enough. So it probably would have been pretty difficult to do all three.
You're probably right. It just should be challenging. And you mentioned your academics. We'll get, you were high regard as far as academics. You were honor roll, you were all academic. So you balanced that out. And that was the other thing. You balanced out your athletic achievements with your academic achievements. How were you able to balance that out? Because that's easier said than done, but you thrived both on the field and off the field.
Yeah, I think it was really just, I don't know, ever since I was young, one of the main things, and I'm sure it was my parents that instilled this into me. It was no matter when I'm going to do something, no matter what it is, I'm just going to give it my all, give it my 100%. So I try to compartmentalize those type of things. So when I'm focusing on academics, just throwing everything I have into it. And then when I step my, foot on the softball field or the weight room or wherever it may be, just absolutely trying to put everything else kind of out of my mind and focusing, 100% on that is kind of how I addressed all of the things. And I remember I think it was actually before the Florida game, I had a massive test. So I was studying really late. I fell asleep in the locker room before the Florida game, slept 2 hours, and then kind of got up to play. So just find a way.
Find a way you did. Let's talk about your 4 years there. You get there, your freshman year is 09. It's so unique because it was right after Allison Kime just graduated. That was her era. There was a bit of a transition from a pitching standpoint, from a team standpoint. You came in, Vanessa Perez came in. You two were kind of be linked because you both would start all 4 years. Vanessa had the outfield assist record up until last season when Kira Clark-Kelsey broke it. Describe coming in. What was it like that freshman year walking in, being a part of that team? It was a veteran team. There were still a lot of veterans, like a Brianne Javier, a Hillary Barrow was on that team, among others, Ashley Cole. Yeah. What was it like walking into that team?
Yeah, that was my freshman year. It was one of the best years. I thought that the senior class really took not only myself, but yeah, Vanessa and some of the freshmen they took us under their wing. They were great upperclassmen to look up to on and off the field. They kind of molded, I felt like they kind of molded the leader that I would later become and those aspects of my game. So yeah, Bree, Hillary, Morgan, all of those guys, Abby, Deanna, everybody ahead of me. I wouldn't be the player that I am, that I was without those guys.
You make the tournament in 2010. I'll never forget, we played in the CUSA championship game against East Carolina. And you scored the only run for us against Tony Paisley, who, by the way, is getting inducted to the Hall of Fame herself at East Carolina. So yeah. There was a pitch, there was a miscommunication between the catcher. You took off from third base in Houston and scored right like that in 2 seconds. But you were always like that. You had instincts there, and you played on instincts defensively and off. Just describe your style, because you would make plays that I'd never seen before, not really seen since, both on the diamond and the defensive end and on the offensive end, just with your instincts and your athletic ability.
Yeah, I think base running has always been, base running and defense. And I think if I took 2 parts of softball that were my absolute favorite, it was those 2. So I could run bases all day and you can hit balls at me all day. And, the offensive end was kind of the aftermath, even though, you had to practice that to be a part, to be on base. But yeah, instinct wise, I don't know. I think it was just maybe just playing it from a young age or the athletic ability, but it was one of those things that I didn't really think about. It was, just kind of, I guess, like you said, it was more of just reaction. It was just a part of how I played the game ever since I was young. Yeah.
Was there any part of playing basketball that kind of you used it to apply to softball that helped you succeed in softball? Was there any aspects of basketball that, apply? Because I've had other coaches and athletes have told me they like, first of all, they like playing multiple sports because they don't get burned out playing one sport. And they actually pick out certain things from one sport that helps them thrive in another sport.
Yeah, I think the aggressiveness, I'm kind of mentioned earlier with just being a scrappy basketball player and the defensive aspect of the game. So I think that translated over to softball nicely, because I think what made me successful on the bases was just how aggressive I was. So I was always looking for, if they weren't paying attention, or just how can I, if I was on second base and the ball was hit to the outfield, so I hope I don't lose you. If the ball was hit to the outfield, I was scoring. It was one of those things that I think my senior year, Coach Gillispie, she never gave me the still sign. It was green light, and kind of when I felt that it was right. So acting on some of those instincts, which was pretty cool that she had that trust in me.
2010, I mentioned the tournament. We go to Gainesville Regional. That always became an event when we go to Gainesville. How many family members, friends of yours would come to watch? That was always like the big storyline.
Yeah.
You played in Gainesville every year, I believe, in your 4 years, because 09 and 11, we went there for the regular season. And then it just so happened in 2010 and 2012, even though we hosted them those years, we would go there for the regionals. What was it like going to play at Florida? Was it different than any other games? Did you approach it any different? What was it like?
Yeah, it was really cool because all my family got to go. And I grew up in a really small town, Mayo, Florida, like you had mentioned earlier, and I have a really big family. So a lot of them weren't able to go, or at least, often to Orlando. But, at Gainesville being only an hour away, not only my family members, but high school friends, teammates, old coaches, they were all in the stands. So I kind of knew that. So it did make it a little bit more nervous at first, leading up to the game. But once I was on the field, it just became another game.
It was at that time, early in your career, you were kind of playing second base because Tiffany Lane was at shortstop, right up the middle field. But then eventually you would take over at shortstop. Tiff had some injuries, so you would get some playing time as a shortstop. And then obviously, I think from at points of your junior year and then all of your senior year, you ended up playing shortstop the whole year. Were you a natural shortstop all the time? Were you second base all the time? What was kind of your fielding position going into UCF? And was that an easy adjustment playing those two positions?
Yes. So I'm just going to plug my phone in so it doesn't die. I was absolutely more a shortstop. I really never played second base until I got to UCF, actually. But Tiffany had been there before, and so they had just asked me if what my second base experience was, and I started practicing there, and I actually really grew to love it. It's different. The angles are different. You're covering second, so it's a whole different piece of the game that I really hadn't experienced before. But playing it, I grew to love it. But I was always more a natural shortstop.
So now, which position you like? Which one did you like more, second or short? Like if I gave you the choice, you could go back in time. Shortstops. Yeah, I figured.
Yeah.
Still in your blood. Do you have a favorite play from your career that stands out? Because for me, the one that I always stand out was, I want to say it was your senior year. I want to say it was Mackenzie Otis' freshman year. It was against East Carolina. It was a Sunday. Okay, go ahead. You describe. You tell the story. Go ahead.
Yeah. So that is actually the one that probably, if I go to think about it, that is probably the play or the series of plays that I do think about the most. So I want to say we were tied, right? I think we were tied, and it was the bottom of the seventh when one of their, I think she was a slapper. She hit a ball in the middle, and I don't really know how I got to it, but I just remember extending my full body, laying out, getting up on my knees, and throwing her out from across the field. And then that was the end of, I think that was the third out. And then we went straight into offense. And I'm not sure if I led off or not, but I know that when I came up to bat, I hit a solo home run to win the game. So that was kind of the series of kind of plays that I definitely think about probably the most often. That
was one, and I think it was one of the games, and then the other one, you ended the game just on a defensive play, because I think that was one that I was thinking was where Mac was starting to get called for illegal pitches, and we're like,
okay,
what's going?
Maybe that was a different one.
That was in 12, or we were the home team. I know the one you're talking about is the year before up in Greenville, where we knocked them out. So I do know that one you're talking about, but you're right. There was one at home where you literally saved the game for her and won the game on your defensive play. That was very similar to the past.
Gosh, okay. Yeah, I think that was two different ones, yeah.
Not to mention, I mean, I haven't even brought up your sophomore year in Claremont, where you had that ball in foul territory. You're running from
Oh
second
yeah, I do
base
remember that.
and almost run into the fence.
Yeah, I ran into the fence several times before.
Yes. Well, I didn't know that at the time. I just remember
Yeah,
freezing in the booth
yeah,
there.
I know. I
Uh,
don't. I think my body will probably pay for it one day, but yeah, it's just I don't know. That's just how I played the game. No, if if I felt like I could go to it, I mean, I was diving, I was sliding, um, giving up my body for the ball was. I didn't even. It wasn't even a second thought of would I do this or not. It just kind of was reaction.
why did you thrive as a leadoff hitter? Because I remember Coach Gillispie and the staff. Stephanie Best was there for a couple years, and we'll talk about the other coaches you've had. But they would try to move you into the middle of the lineup because they were that good of a hitter. You were a great power hitter, but for whatever reason, as a leadoff hitter, you clicked. I'll never forget the Houston series. It was a big
Mhm.
series in 2012, and you literally led off the game each day with a solo homer and kind of set the tone for the sweep. Why were
Yeah.
you? Why did you thrive as a leadoff hitter?
I don't I think I like to start off the game. I think you come in and that you have all of those, the nerves, but the excitement and something about just setting your team off to kind of making the statement for the team and kind of how that game is going to go. I really enjoyed it. And then I also love running bases. So to be able to get on base, um, kind of just freed up that part of the game where I could steal and I could be aggressive and try to help, have the teammates, if I could still second, then all they would need to do is have like a base hit or something like that to kind of get us on the board.
Was base stealing like your favorite part of the game? Because you're in the top 10 in literally every offensive category: home runs, doubles, runs scored, RBIs. You held the stolen base career record for a while until Kaylee Novak broke the career record. You both
Yeah.
share the single season record, which is kind of funny. You both played together. But is the stolen base what is your favorite aspect of softball play? Is it defense? Is it base stealing? What is it?
Yeah, I'd say probably base stealing followed closely by defense. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
pretty. Yeah, it's pretty. I think that's a pretty fair deal there. I mentioned you. Stephanie Best coached you for 2 years. Ruben Felix coached you as well for 2 years.
Mhm.
Jerice Olson as well. And the reason I bring up Ruben, that was significant because post your UCF career, you would actually play baseball for
Yeah.
Team USA. How did that all come about?
Yeah. So Coach Felix, he at UCF, I mean, as you mentioned, he coached for 2 years and he was a huge aspect of my last 2 years. So I looked up to him and respected him. So when he came to me, I think it was at the very end of my senior year or maybe that summer, he was just like, it was the end of my senior year because I remember I tried out, I went to the trials while I was still a senior. And he was like, what do you think about baseball? And at the time I kind of just like, I mean, I played baseball as a kid, but it's been so many years. So I got out there and I remember throwing a few baseballs with him and I'm like, okay, like maybe I can do it. So me, Tawny, and Abby at the time went to the trials. And I was like, hey, what do I got to lose? Let's just see how it goes. And ended up really enjoying it and decided to try out for the Olympic or for the World Cup team the next year. And was was lucky enough to make the team. And that experience was one that I'm so glad that I did. And he gave me that opportunity to be a part of that team.
What was it like playing baseball and adjusting to that after playing softball for so long? How big of an adjustment was that? And then the experience of representing Team USA in a World Cup setting?
Yeah, it's much different. So it took me a little bit of time, especially offensively, because softball is such. I mean, the ball's coming in super quick. You have to make split second decisions. Baseball, because the distance of the pitcher is the same, the ball is coming in much slower. So that was a little tough to kind of learn to how to wait back and to make the read of the ball, because there's a different spin that they can put on it, things like that, and it's coming from the overhead position. So all of the offensive stuff was definitely probably the most challenging to adjust to. But with repetitions and things like that, it kind of is the same sport ultimately. But yeah, just being a part of USA, I mean, what an honor in any setting to represent your country. So to be able to put that jersey on and be a part of Team USA is definitely one of the highlights of my career.
How long did you end up playing for them?
So I just played, I guess it was 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty. Where was the World Cup held at?
It was in Canada, Edmonton.
That's what was that like to be like in like a place like Edmonton?
It was wild. And we flew to Utah, Park City, Utah, for our training. So we stayed there, I want to say maybe a little over a week. And then we flew from Utah over to Canada. And that was my first time being in Canada. So everything was new. But yeah, we stayed in dorms. It was kind of like college again in that aspect. But just meeting all the different countries and learning a little bit about their cultures and obviously, getting the silver medal was something that I'll, definitely always look back on.
You have that medal somewhere?
I do. Absolutely. Yeah. It's up in my room.
You may have to bring that and share that with UCF's current head coach, Cindy Bowmalone. She's got a gold medal from being the assistant on the U.S. under 19 softball team there. So you guys can compare medals there a little bit.
That'll be cool. Yeah, I'm looking forward to meeting her. I haven't actually met her in person yet. So that'll be a fun time to meet her and the new staff.
Yeah, she's two-way great player there. So you get the silver there. Now, meanwhile, UCF, I mentioned obviously 2010. 2011 was a down year. It was a rebuild year. Obviously, Ashley Cole had graduated, things like that. But so you and Vanessa kind of were the leaders at this point and kind of had to help, Abby McLean, you mentioned, also played there. Down year. But I will never forget, it's the fall of 2011. We're getting set for 2012. We had a down year. It was a win-loss record-wise. And I remember I asked you, like, just off the, not even on the record or anything like that. We just chit chat. Hey, how's it going? Class is going well. And I'm like, is this going to be another long year? Is it going to be great? And you're like, no, you were very emphatic to me. Like, no, we're going to be really good. And you need to make sure you get to know this girl by the name of Mackenzie. She could throw. She's going to win a lot of games for us.
Yeah.
How did you know that quickly that she would be that good? Because she was just a freshman coming in. You're a prophet. You were correct. She had a monster year. We would get back to the tournament in 2012, but you had that belief and you believed in her. What was it that you knew that quickly that, we're going to be in good shape?
Yeah. I think it was a couple of things. I think just as an athlete, it's the way that you carry yourself. I think especially as the pitcher, because you need that sense of confidence. And I think she brought that even as a freshman. You could tell she was confident and was going to be a good leader. So I think ultimately that was, but then I faced her. I mean, we were in batting practice. I saw her stuff and I'm like, okay, she can throw. She's really going to be able to kind of throw some teams off and be our number one pitcher. So yeah, I think it was the combination of those two things.
Yeah, she won freshman of the year, co-pitcher of the year in CUSA, but that was part of a big freshman class. Ferris Sullivan was there, played third base. Kaylee Novak, who you get to know really well. And really, ironically, both of you are very similar players. Maddie Schroeder, really one of the best classes that UCF's ever had. What was that like, kind of teaching those freshmen? Because they all, to at some point, have mentioned that you and Vanessa really helped them kind of learn the game, learn the on and off the field stuff, and really led. What was it about that freshman class that you kind of thrived there and kind of took you took them under their wing?
Yeah, as you mentioned, they were, as a unit, they were awesome. But I think even more so, it was easy to teach them. They all were really great people and wanted to learn. And they kind of, I think they came in and looked up to us, which was easy to kind of take them under our wing and show them kind of what UCF softball was meant to be, and to kind of continue our legacy on. So I think just being able to kind of connect with them right away and have them, like, they never really gave us any trouble, because as leaders, you really just try to hopefully pass down something, and they were able to come in and really want to learn from us right away.
I will never forget the Florida game that year. We knocked off Florida 2-0. You led off that game. I want to say you got on base with a double, maybe got on base. Or maybe either single and stole base. I remember something like that. Vanessa got you gun on, and then Ferris Sullivan hit the ball down the line in left field. You scored, Vanessa scored to make it 2-0. And that would be all that Mackenzie would need. She would just throw the lights out. Ironically, she's talked about that game a lot because That game was televised on then Bright House Sports Network, and her future husband was watching the game.
That's cool.
So that's how they met.
Yeah.
So that's
Well,
kind of
awesome. And that's one of the things about the freshmen. They came in right away
Yeah.
and made a huge impact. They continue to do so there, and I followed their careers all, even after I left UCF, I would always go back and watch them when they continue to get better. But I think the reason why we had such a great year is, they all came in and made an impact right away. So without that, I don't think we have, the 2012 as a successful year as we did.
No doubt. And you made a big play in that game defensively against Florida. What was it like to beat Florida that night? Because that was a packed house, TV game, and you knocked off Florida finally there.
Yeah. I mean, it's always sweet to beat them. Is, they were a powerhouse, or they are a powerhouse, especially the SEC, going to the College World Series and things like that. So to be able to beat them and put kind of UCF on the map of saying, hey, like we're right there and right there on the edge of potentially, moving forward and hopefully getting to the College World Series one day. It was huge.
It's big. Dot Richardson, I remember, was on the call, that broadcast on the TV side, I think. It's pretty good. Kaylee, talk about Kaylee, the player she was, because she ironically would basically end up taking over for you at second base once you moved to shortstop. And I know in talking to her, she learned, she looked up to you in a lot of ways and try to, mirror her game to your game and things like that. I mentioned the record. She would end up breaking your career stolen base record. You both have 43 steals in a single season to share that record. Describe her from what you saw and not only playing for her for that year, but as you mentioned, you followed her after that and what she grew into being a great player herself.
Yeah. Kaylee, you could always tell her love for the game was evident. I mean, you looked at her and the way she practiced, the way she played, she just had a true love for the game. And so anytime I see that in a player, it makes me respect them that much more. So I remember at practice, she would ask me like, Natalie, like something about my leadoff at stealing the bases or whatever it may be. So I really tried to give her every piece of knowledge that I had. And I mean, hopefully that she was going to take it and do like amazing things. And she did just that. She grew each and every year as a player, not only stealing bases, but I mean, her slapping ability and defensively. She grew into an outstanding player.
Farrah turned into a sound player herself, third base, would go on to win a Player of the Year in 2014. What was your impressions when you met Farrah and played for her for that year? And such a even keel Southern. I love the Southern accent there, Mississippi girl.
I mean, me and
awesome.
Farrah, we connected right away.
Did you? I figured you would.
Because she's from the South. I'm from the South. Our Southern accents kind of made a good impact. But Farrah never got too happy, never got too sad. She was always, you could always count on Farrah to be a consistent player. At third base, I never, when you played with Hillary Barrow for all those years, you're like, who's going to come in and who's going to be beside me, because you get so used to Hillary just taking over that whole left side and kind of frees me up to be up the middle a little bit. So whenever Farrah came in, that was just a pleasant surprise. She was able to step right in and feel that.
She's a little more toned down than Hillary, I'm assuming, though, at third base, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
Oh my goodness! How sore was your ears there with Hillary at third base there? Because I would hear her in the booth.
Yeah. She's a firecracker. She got me like hyped up. So it was awesome to play next to Hillary. Yeah.
Intense player.
Very
intense player. Got into coaching after that. Vanessa, I want to ask you about Vanessa because we haven't talked enough about Vanessa. She was so underrated. I didn't realize this until I did the research a year ago when we had a lot of time to spare. She had the most outfield assists of any UCF outfielder ever. And I don't think if people watched her, and I think part of it was people kind of took her for granted, like the opponents. They looked at her size. She wasn't the tallest outfielder. She wasn't this big, super, but she had a gun for an arm and an accurate arm. And I think people kind of took her for granted, and she held that record until, like I said, Kira Clarkowski broke it this past year. But just talk about Vanessa, what she meant to the team on the field, and obviously meant to you because you two became best friends.
Absolutely. Yeah, we were best friends. We kind of came in as freshmen and right away just hit it off. Stayed best friends throughout college and after, and having kids and being able to kind of experience life after college. And even she's up in Michigan now, but we still try to stay in close contact, and have some reunions and things. But yeah, on the field, Vanessa it was funny because like you said, yeah, people, they did underestimate her. And I think in that fashion, they're like, okay, yeah, I think I can make this extra base. And on consistently, time in and time out, she was able to just gun them down from the outfield. So it was really fun to watch her play the outfield. I think there was a few times she kind of robbed some home runs and
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
And so things like that, just she had center field. I think the pitchers and us as infielders were confident that if something went her way, we didn't have any worries.
There was one in Claremont in 2012. I think it was against Chattanooga. I think it was Mac's second start. There was a ball drilled to center. She flew up, jumped in the air. I thought I was going to be gone. She jumped in the air and made the catch, saved the game, really.
Yeah. I mean, that one, I know there was a few others that she kind of, definitely stole some home runs from some players. So
you two had a good rapport too on the field because a lot of times when you throw base runners at second, you were kind of the recipient on that. Was there like a chemistry right there, knowing that, oh, she's going to throw it a certain spot, I better be ready on this spot to, make sure I execute my end of this because she's going to execute it on her end?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I think too, like you mentioned, I mean, we played all 4 years together. So by the senior year, it just was like second nature. You spend all those years practicing and playing kind of as in the middle of the diamond. And so you develop that rapport, and it's just becomes second nature, and having that trust.
Were you two, either of you, the vocal type that would talk to the players if whatever needed to be said would be said, or were you more both the type to lead by example?
Yeah, I think Vanessa was probably a little bit more vocal than me. I think we're both probably lead by example. I think that is a part of leadership that I kind of always did struggle with. I think by my senior year I was more vocal, but I've kind of just always been that person, just lead by example. And then if I needed to say something, I would, and I think people would listen just because they're like, oh, Natalie never really like speaks up, but Vanessa, she was a little bit more vocal.
What went through your mind? Your career ends, senior week. I remember you beat Houston, went out on a high note at home. Your career ends in Gainesville against Florida, ironically enough. It's kind of like full circle. I mean, now thinking back, almost 10 years, basically. Emotional, obviously, sudden, but try to take me through that as when your career ended. What was that like, to knowing, wow, this is the last time I'm going to be playing a softball game? And ironically for you, it's full circle because it's in Gainesville, an hour away from where you grew up.
Yeah, in front of all my family and everything. So it was, if it had to end, I was glad it ended there. Because mostly just because my family, my friends could all be there. But I think when it ended, there was a sense of like, oh wow, like I played softball for so many years. Like, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? But now looking back on it now, I'm just so grateful for not only all my coaches, my teammates, but all the memories that I made at UCF. I never have nothing but like just happy thoughts, just thinking back to my 4 years and just all the people that I was able to encounter and the memories that we made. So I guess it was initially sad, but ultimately just amazing experience.
What did it mean playing for Coach Gillispie? What was it like playing for her? She's obviously super proud. When I told her, I texted her, which, sometimes it takes a while for her to respond back. So, but eventually she texted back and she was really excited that you got in. She was super pumped and just happy for you, for just the person that you are, she said. And what did it mean to play for her?
It meant everything. I know that Coach Gillispie, I really, one of the things that I will always be grateful for is I knew coming in that I wanted to do sports medicine. And that was another really big reason I came to UCF, because I remember on my trip, she like brought the director of the sports medicine program in, and I was like, wow, someone really, I was like, she really took and she really cared about not me on the field, but me off the field and kind of what type of person that I would become. So I will forever be grateful for her for being able to allow me to do that and give me that career outside after softball. But even on the field, I think she had so much trust in me. I kind of alluded to it earlier, where some of those plays she kind of just gave me the green light. So we developed a good rapport, and she was tough, but also that coach that you could go and talk to and really feel like she had your back.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because she brought up to me like, oh, she's still doing the physical therapy, right? She's still like, it was funny. That
Yeah.
was first thing that we were talking. She brought up like she's doing well. She, I was off the field.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's funny you bring that up because I always felt like, I know one of her pitches was if you come to UCF, you'll make the NCAA tournament and you'll get a degree. And that every senior class, and I think that's still kind of intact actually. But that was kind of the big thing, right? Like that experience, the highs, the lows, everything got you ready for life after softball, didn't it?
It did. Yeah, it really did. And those times at UCF, it molds you. It molds you into the person that you're going to become after college. And yeah, it really did. I think it made me ultimately a better friend, a better wife, a better mom now. So all of those things I never take for granted.
Mention Ruben. Ruben was an assistant during your time.
Mm-hmm.
Jerice Olson, who's now at her alma mater, North Dakota State.
Yeah.
Staff was just. What was it like working with those two to finish off your career, finish on that high note? Because they obviously came in and helped turn that around in 2012, and obviously seeing the future, the nights after that, Mackenzie, Ferrazera, taking the program to that next level, being nationally ranked at 15, winning 50 games, and all that. In a small way, you had a part in that because you helped them grow, and they kind of took the mantle from you and Vanessa and moved it on. That had to be a lot of pride there.
Yeah, for sure. Coach Olson and Coach Felix, they were right away, they stepped in, and I knew that they were going to be, have a good impact on UCF. It was a good combo because Coach Olson was kind of the quieter one, the one that once Coach Felix maybe kind of like really got on to you, you could go to her and she would just be like, okay, break it down. And she was a great teacher, and you could just tell, I mean, they both really cared about us as young women and wanted us to do well. And then as far as the program, I'm not surprised. I knew coming on campus in 2007 when I walked into Bright House Stadium for the Texas game, and that was my recruiting trip. I remember like, this place is special. It is already special, but I just saw the future of it and saw UCF of what it could become. And so everybody after me has just, continued to just grow UCF softball and grow the program. And I have no doubt that one day we're going to be playing in the College World Series. So super proud.
That's wild. Your recruiting trip was the Texas game?
It was, yeah.
Wow, that's pretty good. Picked out a good game. That's kind of wild there. Wow, that's right. 07, that's a good deal. That's a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
You got to see some good games back then. And Hall of Famers. And, now you're going to be inducted with Jermaine Taylor, who played basketball during your time, right?
I think he was a senior my freshman year.
That's right. And then Blake was kind of in that same time frame. So was Afia Charles, right? Like, you all were kind of in that same.
I want to say Afia was maybe my graduating year, and I think Blake was the year after me. So but we were all right there together.
That's pretty amazing. When you were a student athlete at that time, because I know all of you follow each other in sports, like what you're doing. I mean, you're focused on your sport. Were you aware, though, of that? Man, we got a lot of great athletes, great players here. Like, I mean, think about that. I mean, Blake, you had Jermaine Taylor's probably arguably the best basketball player ever. Afia Charles, the first Olympian from UCF track ever.
Yeah.
Who's married to Torian Wilson, who's on the UCF team with the Fiesta Bowl team, which was right around the same time you played. Josh Sitton was probably of this class is the oldest one. He was I think his last year was 07, ironically, when you took your trip. But that was that time. And there's other athletes we haven't even mentioned that might get inducted down the road. But that time period was kind of that big boom, I thought, for UCF athletics in a lot of ways from an athlete, producing athletes and success.
Yeah, I mean, because as you mentioned, I went to all the sports, soccer, basketball, football, and to see their success, it just, you knew you knew that they, it was a special place. And I think each and every year we just kept getting better athletes. And I think, Blake Bortles, and when they won, who they played?
They beat Baylor in the Fiesta Bowl.
Baylor, yeah, that was, I felt like it was a turning point. It was
yeah,
kind of one of those games that you knew that UCF football was going to just kind of head in the right direction. So now being a part of the Big Ten, and it's just Big 12. It's just going to keep getting better.
That's right. Going to be a part of the Big 12 in years from now.
What year is that? Is that going to
Well, they're still trying to figure that out. Some believe it could be as early as the fall of 23 type frame there. So you might see some Big 12 teams in your schedules at that point. From a softball standpoint, that's going to be wild too, right?
It's going to be big, yeah. So
Oklahoma State's in the Baylor, so some interesting travels there. Tell the audience what you've been up to since. Obviously, softball, we talked about your baseball run at USA Baseball. What have you been up to since?
Yeah, after baseball, I did athletic training. So that's what I graduated with my bachelor's. And I worked for that for a little bit. And then I went back to PT school. And now I'm a physical therapist up in North Carolina. Got married to my husband. I met him at UCF as well. So it's
good timing.
That was another UCF connection. And so we live in North Carolina now, and just had a little boy. He's 8 months. And so, yeah, just kind of enjoying life.
That's pretty good. I'm going to read you I
coached a little bit too of softball. I missed when I was at a prep school in Orlando. I coached a couple years of softball. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy the coaching, or was that one of those where like, well, that's a lot to carry there?
I did enjoy it. I think that I would like to do it again, kind of down the line maybe. But it was one of those things that because I was doing the athletic training piece too. So it was a little bit too much, just timing wise.
Because I know Novak and Sullivan, they're currently coaching in high schools here in the state of Florida. Had successful years, both made the postseason.
That's awesome.
So they're doing well. And of course, Kaylee, her dad was obviously a great baseball pitcher at UCF as well with those ties. And they've done tremendous work. Now I'm going to read you some stats here real quick. Just get some, not all. Your career batting average was .316. You had 206 hits. You're 8th all time in hits. 4th in runs scored, 134. You're top 10 in slugging. You slugged 445. Top 6 in total bases. You had 290. You were successful stealing a base 87.9% of the time. That's the best ever by any night that's tried to steal a bunch of bases. 102 career steals. You're the only UCF player ever to be a 3-time first team all-conference USA selection. And that it's just goes on and on. Describe for those that didn't have the fortunate blessed to watch you play. Describe the when years from now people come to the Plex at UCF and your name is brought up. What do you want people to say? How do you want people to describe you as a player and just overall impact?
I hope that they look back and say, just know my love of the game. Just know that every time that I stepped foot on that diamond, that I was trying to give 100% and then just to help the team win. Some of those kind of, stats that you alluded to, I think that was kind of always a second thought to me. I mean, of course I wanted to do my best, but it was almost like each and every game, it was a competition. So not necessarily on the stat line, but what can I do to help our team win? And if that was still in the base or maybe, leading off and hitting the home run, like you mentioned, that was just kind of all second nature with just wanting our team to be successful.
Yeah. I mean, and I said this, and Coach Gillispie actually told me the same thing, and I kind of agree with it. There wasn't anything on the softball field you couldn't do, right? Like you were the first player I ever saw that would come from the infield position to the outfield position and make an over-the-shoulder catch look routine. And Stephanie, I think, kind of alluded to that as well as somebody who played the shortstop position. Like, there was not anything you could do on the softball field. I mean, that was the kind of the thing that to me that stands out about you. Anything we need, like if you needed to hit a home run, you could hit a home run. If you needed to get on base, you could get on base. If you steal a base. But defensively, some of the plays, the range you had, was that instincts? Was that technique? How much of that was? That's the thing that always marveled me about you from a defensive standpoint.
I think a lot of it was instinct, but I think to go off of that, it was just the amount of reps too. So I think initially it was just having the instinct and just being fearless, because a lot of those plays, I think that if I would have been a little bit tentative or wouldn't have jumped right away, I would have been a half a step too short. So I think just being instinctive and just trying to go all out every single play definitely helped. But then I was the type of player that, like, I mean, of course I needed the batting practice, so I was in the cage a good amount, but I would much rather just take 1,000 reps on the field. And so I remember time in and time out, I would ask, Stephanie, just like, hey, can we stay late at practice? Like, will you just hit me more balls? And I love that part of the game. So I think all those reps I took just made it second nature.
So you love playing defense more than even offense?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
You just like the thrill of it.
I do. And I love, like, and that's why I like shortstop. I think a little bit more than second is just, I felt like maybe you got the ball a little bit more, or you had a little bit more action. But anyway, either one, the middle infield, I just love the thrill of being able to make the dive in the hole or catch the over the shoulder.
Sure.
That was the part of the game that I probably enjoyed the most.
Did you enjoy the over the shoulder catch in the outfield more, or the diving play up the middle? Which play would be more, like, if I said, let's build a video clip of Natalie Land, her favorite play, is it a ball diving for the ball in the infield? Is it an over the shoulder catch? What would be the vintage play?
Probably over the shoulder. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
You're like right there. Like the outfielder sometimes would be like, "Whoa, she's I don't even." I was more worried about her than you from that standpoint. She was like, "All right, I guess I don't need to be here." You had to. Hopefully, you yelled at him a lot to, like, get out of the way.
Yeah. I think we did, and that was the great thing is, I think, on all 4 of my years there, the outfield, we had a really good connection. Like, I always told them, I'm like, okay, I'm going to run as hard as I can toward the ball, but unless you call me off. So we kind of had that understanding that if they knew they had it, they would call me off and I would kind of duck out of the way. But until they did that, I was running as fast as I could in any direction.
I hope they did it quickly. Everybody running problem, but they did many times. And man, it was awesome seeing you play those years. That was fun for me. Obviously, I was at the novelty stage in softball, and I've said it. Like I said, I think when we think of the Mount Rushmore of UCF softball, you should be included in that. And I think this kind of shows that. Congratulations on this honor, being inducted to the Hall of Fame. Well deserved, well earned, and I'm super excited for you, super proud of you. And thanks for everything you've done over the years, putting up with me, interviewing for many years as your player, but just watching you is a privilege, and well deserved. And thank you for everything you've done for UCF, I think, on behalf of many Knight fans.
Well, thank you, Elo. And like I said, I mean, I really appreciate everything that you have done as well, and covering all of our games. And when I think of UCF softball's voice, your voice always comes to mind. So it's a good thing.
I've been fortunate. I've called so many good games and a lot of great players, and you're certainly a part of that. So enjoy the ceremonies. I know softball's got some plans for you as well that weekend and beyond. So we'll be seeing you more, I'm sure. But have to enjoy it.
All right. Well, yeah. Thank you for everything and appreciate it. I'll see you soon.